Hiya, it's the preview show for the Anfield Wrap. Looking ahead to Leeds United versus Liverpool at Anfield. I've got Craig Hannan with me. Gareth Roberts was meant to host this originally. He sent through a load of stats for me to look through. Most of them, Craig, predate when me and you would have been watching Liverpool versus Leeds encounters, or Liverpool encounters in general, to be honest. There's one that I do want to hone in on just because it's nice, really, which says Liverpool are the only side unbeaten at home in the Premier League this season. Won 9, drawn 3, and have conceded a league low 7 goals at Anfield so far this term. I think if I'm looking at Leeds from the sort of outside and imagining them coming to Anfield and what that will be like, my mind sort of harks back to the behind closed doors game and the madness of that. It seems like Leeds have only got madder since as well, to be honest. I think we could all much do with this one just being a bit straightforward for Liverpool, really.
I think it feels like a completely different time, not just because of the no fans aspect, but also, you know, Leeds game first game back. You know, they've been missing some of their big players over the past season. That's been a real problem for them, and Calvin Phillips and a couple of others. They've been hit by COVID really badly. They just don't have any real momentum, do they? Liverpool, that's pre-Thiago. We saw what he does at the weekend, pre-Jota. It just feels like a completely different time to this one, and I'm looking forward to this. It suddenly becomes the biggest game of the season so far, doesn't it? And I know Jurgen Klopp said something along the same lines. I know it's one of his fans that we've been looking at and thinking, well, you know, everything we're thinking about is in the context of what happens next, the big one on Sunday. But suddenly, after what happens with Man City and us obviously getting the win at the weekend, it's like, well, you know, we need to win this, because if you don't win this, what is the fucking point of everything that's gone on before?
Yeah, and last time I think me and you spoke before we went to the game at Ellen Road, and we of course went to that game together, and I think we had a bit of a chat about the rivalry between Leeds and Liverpool, and how, you know, as I mentioned there, most of the stats that sort of predate that. It's a rivalry which feels a little bit dated, I think, but, you know, given the context of what happens at Ellen Road, it's an absolute bear pit, which is, you know, what we were expecting at the time. But Liverpool go there and get a result, but then obviously the injury to Harvey Elliott comes, and the sort of unsavoury things chanted from their fans as well. I think there's always that sort of thing. You expect a certain level of professionalism for this Liverpool side, but I think, you know, Anfield as a crowd are going to be well up for this one.
Definitely. The Leeds Liverpool thing, the rivalry, it's just as I'm about 10, 11 years old. So I remember watching the games, the Viduka one, the Heskey scoring the 2 belters in front of the away end, all of that. So there was still, when we went to the Ellen Road game, there's still that edge to it in my mind anyway. It felt like a big game, 2 rivals. What we watched that day was a game that was a lot more straightforward for Liverpool than I had anticipated, and it maybe showed the drop off on that day between this season and last season. And it was feral, you know, and you know, no less around the Harvey Elliott injury, which, you know, will be playing on the minds of not just him but his teammates on Wednesday. Liverpool want to make a big atmosphere anyway because of everything that's happened over the past few days. So it's got all the ingredients, Josh, to be a big one, doesn't it? Yeah,
and you mentioned about being straightforward for Liverpool. Leeds have been a bit of a patchy team this season. I think it's fair to say. Gareth had a few of the stats here. They're the 13th team to exceed 50 goals or more after 24 games in a Premier League season. All of the previous 12, all but one went down. I don't think that Leeds are going to be going down this season. I think that there's enough sort of low quality in the relegation scrap there for Leeds to see themselves up there. But it's strange, isn't it? Because Leeds were a team last season who you thought might you know, look to upset the Premier League. They came with a certain style of football, but I think, as you saw at Ellen Road that day, they're the sort of team who make themselves completely there for the taking, particularly against a side with the quality like Liverpool.
Yeah, this you wanted to step up from them this season. You want a very, you know, if you're a Leeds fan, you wanted at the very least to continue on the same path that they did last season, and like we've said earlier, we've seen a drop off, mostly down to their defence. Like at the back, they're leaking goals left, right, and centre, and you know, you see them at the weekend. I think that was United's first set piece or corner that they'd scored from this season. You know, Liverpool will be licking their lips at that, with how good we are at them. And I think that's been one of the problems this season for Leeds is defending those set pieces. So, you know, you think back to Fabinho scoring in the first game between the two teams. So, you know, in terms of what Liverpool have been doing this season, you know, the fact that we've scored far more than anyone else from set pieces, that's like a real sort of opportunity. Like, I wasn't surprised at the weekend to see both the fullbacks rested for the game against Norwich, because if Klopp's planning the 3 games, which he will have been, you know, he'll be looking at Leeds and thinking, well, there's the key point that we can exploit. And Liverpool should be good enough, you know, on their day to beat Leeds, but you know, if you're going to exploit their key weakness, which is in set pieces, and you know, allow Liverpool's you know, the best aspects of the way they played the game this year, it's set pieces and having Trent and Robertson on the side.
Yeah, and you mentioned the sort of stylistic matchup between the two sides, and I think Leeds are always an interesting case study because they're a team who do play attacking football, and one of their better players this season has been Rafael, who's obviously a lad who's sort of been linked to Liverpool, and I think when you see these attacking sides come up, in particular, players like him are the sort of ones that you see being linked with Liverpool, particularly the sort of player, the profile of player that Liverpool look to buy from. Rafael looks like, a top player for Leeds and someone who, maybe Liverpool could do with as an option in the squad.
Yeah, he's a really, really good footballer, and stylistically looks like the kind of footballer that Liverpool would look to. We've obviously signed Diaz, so I don't really see them looking at him for this summer, but they're maybe keeping an eye on for future years. But when you watch him, so for instance, the 3 games leading up to the United game, anytime I watched him, he looked like he was jaded. He looked as if like he's played a lot of football, and Leeds have had a lot of injuries, so it's not as if they've been able to rotate. And he just looked like a footballer who played too much in a poor team, really, and it become a bit of a, just hard work to play within that side. Now, he doesn't start against United yesterday, and instantly when he's brought on, you see everything's lifted. And you can't look at that game and say, well, Leeds were dragged back into it by Rafinha, but his presence obviously sort of like gets the crowd excited. Suddenly, Leeds do a switch in midfield where they're right on United is a bit more like the Leeds of what you'd expect in that midfield, getting onto Pogba and really sort of hurrying and harassing them. And then Rafinha gets the goal, and he's a big player for them. But you just have to look at what Liverpool have going forward to say that even if we're not able to exploit them at set pieces, we should have far too much for them. And you can debate on what front three you're playing, whether you start Thiago, whether you don't. We've got the 2 full-backs and some of the options that we've got up top, we should really be able to hurt them. It'll be difficult, it will be.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's talk through some of that team selection and team news then. Gareth's actually put as the headline of Leeds' team news, it looks like they have cock out, which is obviously,
obviously
very typical Gareth Roberts joke there.
I should have read this document, Josh.
But in terms of the Liverpool side of things, there's obviously question marks over Firmino and Jota going into this. There's been a slightly more positive update on the 2 of them today, that the club are trying to sort of get them both back for the final, which indicates there is still a bit of hope there. You wouldn't imagine that either of them
not for this one.
For this one. So would you be tempted to go with the same sort of 3 that started the Norwich game at the weekend up top?
I think you might do a little bit of madness. I think the fact that both Mane and Salah both play 90. I don't think both of them start this game. I expect that one of them to be brought off earlier and they both stay on. I think he probably plays Diaz again just for momentum, and he looked really bright at the weekend.
He probably doesn't play Sunday if one of Jota or Firmino is available, does he?
Probably not, but I'd love him to he's already put himself in contention with the way he played. Yeah. I thought when he came on against Inter Milan, I actually thought that it might work against him for the cup final, because you're going to be looking at that and thinking, here's what he can do when he comes off the bench. Yeah. But I thought second half he was excellent. His run for the goal, by the way, is so good. I keep talking about Suarez. Because he reminds me so much of when Luis Suarez joined, but that run, the way he sort of comes from wide, drags the defender and then jinks in, the touch, the dink, everything about it was Luis Suarez, wasn't it? And I'm going to stop one of these shows from mentioning him, but I think Diaz, I think one of Salah or Mane, I'm just not sure who, and I think there might be a bit of Origi madness. He brings him on at the weekend, and I thought his presence there just being something different.
Just occupied.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't see how he starts both of those throughout the rest of them. Like, what are you doing in midfield?
This is the question, really, isn't it? Because the midfield has been the thing that he's really had to change the game in the past 2 games, and I wonder whether he just looks to go with a bit more solidity for this one. I'd imagine at Wembley on Sunday that he'll want to get all of Fabinho, Thiago and Henderson on the pitch. Yeah. So it's what sort of combination.
You're working your way back from that,
this one. To be honest, if I'm Jurgen, I could be tempted to look at the Leeds Ellen Road game as a sort of blueprint for this one, and go with Fabinho in there, Harvey Elliott and Thiago again, and then all you have to do then for Sunday is look to bring Jordan Henderson back in.
Yeah, it's just a Thiago question, really, because we're all so excited about Thiago. Some the way he was playing in terms of how progressive he is with his passes, how direct those are. Instantly, he just pins the opposition back and he lifts everything. He lifted everything for Liverpool at the weekend, and whether it was the crossfield balls or whether it was those arrowed sort of balls into the middle of into our attack, and everything within me says, I want to watch Thiago again. I want to see him play football. He's gorgeous. But I just wonder if maybe Jurgen thinks like playing him for 90 in this game is maybe too much to then go again on Sunday. Whether he thinks, well, I'll bring him on again if we're in trouble and I keep him for Sunday, or whether he wants him to find more rhythm. Look, Klopp will know in terms of what he's been doing and training with him and how fit he is. Or they might just do 60 for Thiago and say to Thiago, on 60 we're bringing you off, Kate on. I think he might do a bit of Curtis Jones as well, because I wasn't expecting Oxlade-Chamberlain at the weekend. No. I don't think he'll do Henderson again, certainly not in the 6. I think Thiago comes in now for both these games. I think he'd be looking at Henderson and Thiago and going, right, these are my two for the Sunday, so I don't want to start both of them in this game. And I think Curtis might be the furthest one forward, possibly.
And you mentioned that you're expecting the two fullbacks to come straight back in for this one as well. Would you be doing anything else at centre half? I thought Matip was great again at the weekend, to be honest. He seemed to keep eliminating doubts around his fitness and everything, really.
I think he might just take Matip out. I think he might be the only change. I think he just keeps going with Virgil now until that cup game. I think the cup game just helps everything for Jurgen, especially with these 3 games. I think, the manner in which Van Dijk plays football, it's not as if he's coming off sweating, is it? It's mostly in his mind. But I think he just says to Van Dijk, you're going again until that cup final. I think he switches Matip. I think the way in which Konate played at Inter, and he's shown himself this year to be really, really reliable. Certainly with Van Dijk in there, I think he maybe looks at Konate and goes, well, why would I take the risk on Matip playing 2 or 3? I think it's Matip and Van Dijk, isn't it, at the weekend? So I just think he switches Matip out.
Absolutely. We're going to ask you to put your money where your mouth is now in terms of a score prediction. It's tough, isn't it? Because as we mentioned, Leeds are a mad side. It looks like a Liverpool side who are starting to sort of click into that just winning gear and getting results now. So go on, give us your score prediction for the game.
So I think at the weekend I was hoping for a statement result. I think as fans we all want the statement, the 3, the 4. And I think the way in which they came back was just another way for Liverpool to win this, and it was a statement in its own way. Diaz getting the goal and so on. I think with this game you will see the goals that we've all hoped for. I'm going to go 3.
I was thinking 3.
And I think there's going to be a bit of Divock madness. It might be a bit more Diaz. I'm trying to think of who the last one. Fabinho, fuck it, he's scored more than everyone this season. Just throw him in. If that happens and I haven't bet on it, fucking at me and remind me, by the way. But yeah, no, I'm excited about this. I just think the manner in which the way in which the weekend sort of panned out. The fact that we've got the cup final on the horizon, the atmosphere is going to be great. It's a night game. It's against Leeds. I think the Reds are going to be on it.
Absolutely, the Reds are going to be on it, as we expect. It's the big one on Sunday, but this feels like the biggest game of the season now, as Jurgen Klopp says, because each game in front of Liverpool at the moment is the biggest game of the season, because we're back in a title race, aren't we? Up the Reds.